In the first attack, the Indians succeed in injuring 7 and killing 1 Spaniard. Offshore, Columbus's remaining ships are about to leave.
Almirante, almirante, es una masacre. Han matado a todos en la colonia, es una masacre, almirante.
But when he hears that his men are under attack, Columbus finally realizes that his dreams of a successful colony are fading. He seems overwhelmed by constant disaster. So once again, he turns to God for salvation.
I clambered to the highest point of the ship, crying in a trembling voice, with tears in my eyes, pleading, "Save me!"
Tu hijo, Cristóbal! ¿Por qué me abandonas?
But his settlers on land are still suffering. They've killed 10 Indians, but the attackers regroup and mount another ambush, killing and slaughtering indiscriminately. Overwhelmed, the survivors decide that escaping back to the ships is their only option. Diego Mendez, a man who had set out on the voyage as just a clerk, heroically takes the lead on land. Back and forth, Mendez rows the survivors to the waiting ships. Columbus's plans for Veragua are over. Columbus has no option but to return to Spain and admit that his 4th voyage has been a complete failure. The stricken ships flee from the horrors of Veragua, but the journey home will prove to be more treacherous than anything they have lived through yet. Christopher Columbus's final lost voyage has lurched from calamity to disaster. He left Spain nearly a year ago and has sailed beyond the known world to the ferocious coast of Panama. But many of his crew have died, killed by disease or slaughtered by Indians. All the great explorer, the former admiral of the ocean sea, can do now is cut and run. He decides to flee north. Ahead lies a vast expanse of open ocean. Columbus's hope is to catch winds that will carry his ailing fleet to Hispaniola, and from there, all the way back to Spain. But they have a serious problem they can no longer ignore. All the ships are slowly sinking.
I sailed in the name of the Holy Trinity on Easter Monday, in ships that were rotten, leaky, and worm-eaten.
They are riddled with the notorious peril of warm tropical waters. Microscopic marine parasites are turning the hulls into a sieve. Even today, these beautiful tropical waters still hide this deadly peril. Boat repairers in the Caribbean know it only too well.
Shipworm is a clam that eats wood. Then the wood putrefies like this. Whilst you may think that the wood is good and strong, it's actually completely destroyed by the shipworm. It means that the boat is far more vulnerable at sea.
Columbus first recognized the problem back in Veragua. He could have repaired his ships then, but he didn't. Worse still, the only skilled shipbuilders in the crew have been killed by the Indians. None of the surviving sailors knows how to make the repairs. The ships are doomed. All Columbus and his crews can do is pray for land and pump for their lives.
One of the problems with these ships is they're continually taking on water. And so you had to have an efficient way of getting the water out of the bilges. And they used a suction pump, which is basically a tube and a piston that pulled the water up from the bilges and deposited it on the deck.
It is a moment of extreme peril. The stricken ships are at their most vulnerable, and the weather is once again turning against them. It will be the fourth storm to hit the Voyage. Columbus recorded the ordeal in his log.
The stormy sea forced me to turn back. At just one blow, I lost 3 anchors. By midnight, it seemed as if the world were coming to an end. But my one remaining anchor, by the power of the Lord, saved me.
And still the vessels continue to take on water. Every minute counts. The fight against the rising waters goes on all day and all night. Finally, the storm passes.
6 days later, when good weather returned, I had lost all my tackle, but resumed course. The ships were as riddled with holes as a honeycomb, and the crew exhausted and dispirited.
Using the maps he made on his previous voyages, Columbus attempts to guide the fleet to safety. The ships limp on just long enough to reach hospitable land.
He manages to coax these 2 vessels north to the Caribbean, and so they eventually are shipwrecked on the island of Jamaica.
Columbus's ships, riddled with shipworm, eventually run aground in the sand of Jamaica. 20 of the original crew have died. Columbus is far from the new world-conquering hero of the first voyage.
One of these great footnotes about Columbus's career that most people don't know, but one of the greatest sailors of all time basically ended his career by being marooned on a deserted island. And that was it. That was the end of Columbus's sailing days.
His great challenge now is survival. But Columbus is in no fit state to command.
By the end of the fourth voyage, Columbus was suffering from a number of ailments: gout, arthritis, he could not walk sometimes. He was also affected by periodic loss of eyesight. It conceivably and probably affected his mental outlook.
Columbus orders his sailors to build a makeshift camp out of the shipwreck debris. But their situation is desperate. The crew have spent nearly 2 months at sea since Veragua. All their food is gone, and they fear leaving the shore because of hostile Indians inland. Only one man is prepared to take the initiative. Diego Mendez first joined the crew as a simple clerk. Now he takes the lead. He later wrote about the steps he took to save the crew.
I gave out the last ration of wine and biscuit. Taking a sword in my hand, I went with a group of men into the interior of the island, since no one had yet dared to search for food for the admiral and his men. By God's grace, I found the natives so gentle that they did me no harm. On the contrary, they welcomed me and willingly gave me food.
With fresh food now available for his men, Columbus can turn his attention to finding a way home. But he realizes there is very little hope of a ship arriving by chance. No vessel has passed Jamaica since 1494, 8 years ago. But now Columbus does have a plan. Based on the charts and calculations he made during the first 3 voyages, Columbus thinks he has a pretty good idea of where his crew are in relation to the Spanish colony at Santo Domingo on the island of Hispaniola. Calculating that Hispaniola lies about 100 miles away, Columbus asks Diego Mendez to canoe the last treacherous stretch to raise the alarm and bring a rescue ship.